Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one. I mean, not to mention, Trump is the wall candidate, not Cackle's McKnee pads. Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
That brings me to Howard Stern and his interview of Kamala Harris, where he put the cards on the table about how he was feeling, in particular about her latest media tour, which did not include Saturday Night Live, but she was lampooned on it a little. A lampoon may be too strong, but she was mocked, as they usually do, just to Republicans. Take a listen.
Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly didn't just criticize Howard Stern. They put his entire legacy on trial and found it guilty in minutes. With Gutfeld's razor-edged mockery and Megyn's cold, methodical precision, they exposed a truth Stern fans have avoided for years. The rebel didn't evolve, he retreated. The man who once terrorized the airwaves now tiptoes through conversations, chasing approval from the same elite crowd he used to torch for sport. This wasn't nostalgia or cheap shots. It was a brutal autopsy of a legend who traded fire for comfort and edge for access. What unfolded wasn't a roast. It was the collapse of a myth that can no longer survive daylight.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there. When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like, when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country. Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the, where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Gutfeld leaned in with that knowing half smile, the signal that someone's about to get dismantled. And this time, Howard Stern was the target. The so-called king of all media, once feared by executives and regulators alike, was dragged out of the past and forced to stand next to his present self. Greg didn't rant, he contrasted. The reckless, rule-breaking shock jock who once mocked power without hesitation versus the cautious, scripted celebrity interviewer desperate to stay in good standing. And that contrast did more damage than any insult ever could. When rebellion turns selective and risk becomes optional, the crown doesn't slip, it evaporates.
Period, while listening to it. You should hear what keeps him up at night.
Enjoying this takedown, don't forget to hit subscribe button. Greg zeroed in on the transformation that nobody wants to admit out loud. Howard Stern didn't just age, he sanitized himself. The guy who once laughed at outrage and thrived on offending everyone now sounds like a therapist trapped in a billionaire's body. Greg mocked the irony, saying it's like watching a former punk rocker lecture people about mindfulness from a gated mansion. Stern built his empire by refusing to apologize, then spent the second half of his career doing nothing but exactly that. The fire that once made him dangerous didn't burn out, it was deliberately smothered, because rebellion is expensive and approval pays better.
She also appeared on Howard Stern, where he said he'd even vote for a wall over Trump. Harris replied, "I'm not a wall, but I am plastered."
Greg didn't let Stern hide behind the word growth. He tore straight through it, pointing out that Stern now apologizes for the very jokes that made him untouchable in the first place. The former wrecking ball of radio has turned into a man who checks the room before he swings, if he swings at all. Greg said Stern didn't just sell out the booth, the mic, and the headphones. He sold the nerve that once made him matter. Old Stern attacked everything without permission. New Stern asks for it, and once you start asking, the rebellion is already over.
But it is incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comics, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came.
Greg went straight for the hypocrisy that sits at the center of Stern's reinvention. For years, Howard branded himself as the fearless truth teller, mocking phoniness wherever he found it. Then the money got bigger, the circles got richer, and suddenly the edge disappeared. Stern didn't just change, he became the exact kind of insulated celebrity he once tore apart on air. Greg pointed out that rebellion was never the problem, consistency was. The moment Stern chose access over honesty, the shock jock vanished, replaced by a safe, curated version built to protect status instead of challenge it.
Bologna slices at strippers' butts. With accuracy, I might add. Now he's worried the possible leader of the free world can't handle his verbal foot rub. I wonder if he used to get this nervous for the strippers before he'd spank them on their bare asses with a dead fish.
Greg tore into what Stern's show has actually become, and it wasn't radio anymore. It was celebrity maintenance. The man who once ambushed guests now tiptoes around them, polishing egos like a high-end concierge terrified of losing access. Stern's studio, Greg joked, feels less like a battleground and more like a safe space for A-listers desperate to be praised. No risk, no tension, just long, gentle conversations designed to offend no one and impress the right people. The shock jock who once thrived on discomfort now avoids it entirely, and that's when Greg delivered the gut punch. Stern didn't lose relevance because the world changed. He lost it because he stopped challenging anyone worth challenging.
Okay, I hope you had a good week. I did, and no thanks to Howard Stern. True, the New York Post reported that Stern hit a chic restaurant in NYC with a crew of A-listers, including Jimmy Kimmel, Jennifer Aniston, John Hamm, Justin Theroux, Jason Bateman. I was not invited. I guess because my first name doesn't begin with the letter J.
Megyn Kelly didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She said Howard Stern's fall wasn't shocking. It was inevitable. Rebellion without principle always collapses the moment it stops being profitable. Stern, she argued, was never evolving. He was adapting to survive. When outrage stopped paying and elite approval started mattering more, he adjusted his morals to match the room. Megyn dismantled the idea of growth, calling it a cover story for a retreat. The old Stern mocked conformity. The new one sells it wrapped in therapy language and fake enlightenment. This wasn't wisdom earned with age. It was fear dressed up as maturity, and Megyn made it clear when a rebel starts begging to belong, the rebellion is already dead. Megyn went straight for the irony and didn't let go. Howard Stern, the same man who built his empire screaming about censorship, now hides behind political correctness like it's body armor. She said he didn't just drift into the establishment. He was absorbed by it, dissolved into the very culture he once mocked for sport. The rebel who laughed at virtue signaling now leads it, carefully choosing words, issuing preemptive apologies, and policing others for offenses he made a fortune committing. Megyn compared the transformation to watching a roaring lion voluntarily declaw itself just to be allowed inside the palace. Stern didn't evolve into something wiser. He retreated into something safer. She then exposed the double standard that defines his current persona. Stern still presents himself as the outsider, the misunderstood truth teller, while living deep inside elite privilege.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
I agree with you.
And when I see them, how did you react to the Saturday Night Live bit?
Here's Stern on anyone daring to poke a little fun at Kamala.
Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh
my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about.
Mansions, handlers, access, protection. He lectures everyday people about empathy and growth from behind walls most of his audience will never cross. The man who once shattered cultural taboos now pretends his own past is a clerical error, dodging it, minimizing it, or rewriting it entirely. Megyn called it revisionism, not reflection, a cowardly attempt to erase the foundation that built his power while enjoying every every benefit it still provides. And Megyn sharpened the blade and went for what Stern fears most: irrelevance. She said his show, once designed to provoke thought through discomfort, now runs from discomfort like it's radioactive. Every word is filtered, every opinion sanded down, every conversation engineered to avoid backlash from the same cultural gatekeepers he's desperate to impress. Then she dropped the verdict. Howard Stern didn't grow, he shrank. He folded into money, safety, and validation, while pretending he's still the fearless voice behind the mic. That mic, she said, now comes with invisible guardrails built directly into his contract. Greg jumped back in to twist the knife. He mocked Stern as a performer who lost the punchline, but keeps telling the joke anyway, convinced the audience is still laughing. What used to be dangerous radio now feels like comfort programming for retired rebels. Long monologues, emotional processing, and
well, I just saw it actually, and it was funny. I am a huge fan of Maya Rudolph's. I think she put a lot of time into doing the piece and the character.
Okay, so I do think it's interesting. He's very scared. A lot of I hear this from a lot of my Democrat friends. They're scared of Trump winning again. They're scared of Trump.
Nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last, but they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists. He's living in the Hamptons. What would the Stern of now think of the Stern of before?
Endless self-justification. The revolution Stern once led didn't fail. It moved on without him. All that's left is an echo, softer, safer, and trapped inside a golden studio that used to shake the world. Megyn closed it with a truth Stern can't outrun. His downfall wasn't aging or evolution. It was the moment he traded identity for permission. He didn't gain wisdom, he gained silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that comes from saying nothing worth risking anymore. Relevance, she said, doesn't disappear overnight. It expires quietly when courage is replaced by comfort. Greg circled the remains with one last jab, saying the most tragic part of Stern's story is that he doesn't even see the fall. He still believes he's the rebel outsider, when in reality, he blends seamlessly into the establishment he once attacked. The man who sprinted toward controversy now flinches from it, swinging with soft gloves where brass knuckles once lived. The king of all media didn't get dethroned. He stepped down, locked himself inside a soundproof booth, and kept talking long after the world stopped listening.
Right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You got to wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Greg leaned back and went after what Howard Stern's show has quietly become. And it wasn't radio in any meaningful sense anymore. It was therapy hour disguised as relevance. Endless airtime soaked in emotional confessions, self-analysis, and long, winding stories about growth, healing, and how deeply misunderstood Stern believes he still is. Greg mocked the predictability of it, saying every episode now feels like the same audiobook chapter on repeat, narrated by a man convinced introspection alone counts as courage. The chaos is gone. The danger is gone. In its place is a soft, padded format where Stern echoes whatever sentiment is currently trending, mistaking consensus for insight and applause for impact. The edge that once made him unavoidable has been replaced by safe reflections carefully engineered not to upset the wrong people. Megyn didn't joke. She delivered the indictment. Howard Stern, she said, once had everything a rebel could want: reach, influence, and the power to question anything and anyone. And instead of using it, he neutralized it. He didn't stop challenging the culture because he outgrew rebellion. He stopped because rebellion stopped protecting him. The man who once mocked the mob now fears it.
This is Stern's self-imposed penance for subjugating women to demoralizing stunts, capitalizing on desperate females thirsting for attention, even if it's from an oily paddle striking their bare asses. True, much of Stern's transformation is based mainly on a delusional hatred for Trump, but it's also coming from a bottomless hatred for himself and his past.
The provocateur who built an empire on defiance now defines himself by how politely he conforms. Stern didn't abandon the rules. He learned them, memorized them, and now enforces them with the same moral certainty he once ridiculed. Megyn called it the most embarrassing transformation of all. Not a fall from grace, but a slow crawl toward approval. The outsider became the gatekeeper. The rebel became the preacher. The voice that once shattered norms now lectures others from behind wealth. Insulation and elite protection. And for someone who made a career out of brutal honesty, choosing comfort over confrontation isn't maturity, it's surrender. Howard Stern didn't lose his influence because time caught up with him. He lost it the moment validation mattered more than truth. Greg closed it out with a line that stuck like a verdict. Howard Stern didn't just leave the rebellion behind. He rebuilt the entire system around himself and called it growth. The man who once swore he'd tear the establishment down now polishes its trophies, mistaking proximity to power for purpose. What used to be a stage for disruption has become a hall of mirrors, where every broadcast reflects Stern back at himself.
Howard's simply redefining masculinity. And why is it always the male lefties who are so desperate to get rid of masculinity entirely? It's guilt and self-preservation. Because scrape beneath the surface of any liberal male, and what do you find? A creep, terrified of his priggish past. Piggish past, I mean, not priggish. What is priggish?
Endlessly admired, endlessly justified. The rebel's platform was replaced with self-worship, and the danger that once defined him dissolved into comfort. Greg said that's the real tragedy. Not that Stern changed, but that he forgot who he was. When a king stops charging at the front and starts begging for applause, the crowd doesn't revolt. It just stops listening. And that silence, heavier than booze or outrage, is the final sound of relevance leaving the room. Howard Stern once ruled the airwaves by refusing to conform. Now he whispers safely behind velvet walls, protected, approved, and completely ignorable. The microphone still works, but the roar is gone, and it isn't coming back.